What happens when someone posts half-nude pictures online, but calls themselves property of God? Today, we're breaking down the shocking rise of influencers who use religion as a brand strategy. And trust me, once you hear this, you'll never look at their posts the same way again. If you've been keeping up with the streaming world, you've likely come across India Love. She's not just a familiar face. She's a social media powerhouse with over 5.7 million Instagram followers. There were rumors she dated DDG for a while, but regardless of her personal life, her influence is massive. Recently, I stumbled upon a video of hers where she shared some insight about her career earnings. When asked what had been the most lucrative for her, music, streaming, or OnlyFans, she didn't hesitate. For her, OnlyFans had been the real moneymaker. But here's the twist. Despite the high earnings, she decided to step away from OnlyFans earlier this year. Why quit something so profitable? India explained that while the platform was lucrative, it carried a stigma that started affecting her professional opportunities. When she walked into boardrooms or big meetings, the mention of OnlyFans often caused doors to close rather than open. She realized that moving away from OnlyFans allowed her to access bigger, long-term opportunities, like major brand deals in fashion and consumer goods. These ventures offered not only financial stability, but also a more sustainable and respected career path. Whether or not nudity was involved, the key point was perception. Her professional image was more important than the short-term gains. India also reflected on her personal growth. She admitted she had been stubborn, always marching to the beat of her own drum, often ignoring advice. While she doesn't regret those choices, she acknowledges that listening more might have changed the trajectory of her life. Still, she's at peace with how things unfolded, believing it was all part of a bigger plan. In this part, India Love seems to be reflecting on her earlier choices, acknowledging that certain paths just didn't feel right for her and that, spiritually, she believed God had other plans for her. A clip of her saying this made its way to me. Shout out to Brother Kelvin for sending it, and I decided to check out her Instagram for context. Scrolling through her page, it's clear she's a major public figure. 5.6 million followers, listed as an entrepreneur, and even proudly declaring herself property of God. On one hand, some of her posts have a more polished, refined vibe, but others are undeniably provocative, posing in ways that would be considered explicit or bordering on nudity. You can imagine why I can't show it all here without running into issues with monetization. This contrast is where the discussion gets interesting. Here's a woman openly identifying as a person of faith, yet some of her content clashes with traditional expectations of modesty. This is part of a larger trend I've noticed on short-form media. Some creators selectively use Christianity, or references to God, when it suits their secular or public persona, while leaving other scriptural teachings aside. For example, India Love shares messages about God blessing single moms, speaking about vindication, new opportunities, and spiritual as well as material upgrades. She talks about health, wealth, and transformation for women who may have faced struggles, including single mothers. The language is empowering and inspiring. God is giving them confidence, success, and even physical transformations. But here's where the tension emerges. The message implies that God will reward personal freedom, bold behavior, and unapologetic self-expression, even when it comes to intimate or sexual choices, with body-level transformations. Essentially, after embracing a lifestyle of independence and indulgence, God is portrayed as helping people flourish, both spiritually and physically. This juxtaposition between religious identity and provocative lifestyle raises important questions about how faith is being represented and leveraged online. It's a fascinating, complex, and sometimes controversial dynamic that's becoming increasingly common in digital media spaces. Here's the part that really stood out. The idea being presented on social media that no matter what choices a single mom has made, whether it involves sexual freedom or unconventional lifestyles, God will bless her, help her get her body back, and elevate her life. A simple search on TikTok for single moms Christianity will bring up countless videos promoting this message. All positive, all encouraging. God is redeeming. God is restoring. God can still use you. It's uplifting, but it raises a question. What does the Bible actually say about children born out of wedlock and the choices of the mothers? What guidance is given for women who had a child outside of marriage, but are no longer with the father? Can they marry someone suitable, or should they remain single? Scripture is clear. Having a child out of wedlock is considered fornication. In 1 Corinthians 7, the Apostle Paul writes about sexual conduct, emphasizing that abstaining from premarital sex is the path God intended to avoid complications and maintain order in human relationships. Paul even says, "It is good for a man not to touch a woman," which might sound extreme today, but the principle is about boundaries and preserving holiness in relationships. Yet, on platforms like TikTok, this part is rarely discussed. Instead, the focus is on redemption, transformation, and empowerment, while the warnings against premarital sex are often omitted because they are harder to market. Many creators, whether on OnlyFans, in adult entertainment, or elsewhere, highlight the inspirational, redemptive side but leave out the full biblical context. Importantly, the child remains innocent in all of this, a product of human error, not judgment. For a woman who has never been married, Scripture allows for the possibility of marriage and rebuilding a family. But it also cautions against repeatedly living a lifestyle that leaves one vulnerable to exploitation or transient relationships. A woman must respect herself first. Only then can she expect respect from others. Pastor Gino Jennings emphasizes that redemption is possible. Marriage after having a child is allowed, but it should be part of a considered plan, not a continuation of prior patterns. The problem is compounded in modern social media culture, where the Bible is sometimes selectively quoted or interpreted to serve personal or commercial agendas. This selective messaging contributes to why many men struggle to take Christian women seriously, especially when faith and lifestyle appear misaligned. The larger takeaway: encouragement is valuable, but full understanding and intentionality, respecting both oneself and Scripture, remain critical for long-term growth, integrity, and authentic spiritual influence. It becomes obvious when someone isn't living according to Christian principles. They might claim faith, but their actions tell a different story. Take India Love, for instance. She frames her decision to leave OnlyFans as following God's will, yet the underlying lifestyle choices suggest a very selective interpretation of faith. Similarly, some messages aimed at single moms emphasize God blessing them, helping them snap back, or prosper materially. Yet these same actions, if judged by Scripture, would be considered sins, like fornication. This disconnect between professed faith and actual lifestyle choices reflects a much broader cultural and spiritual problem, a trend that has become increasingly visible in today's social media-driven society. Many people, particularly influencers and public figures, selectively engage with religious teachings in ways that align with personal desires, convenience, or public image, rather than with genuine spiritual obedience. The phenomenon is complex, blending psychology, sociology, and theology. At its core, it revolves around the human tendency to reinterpret moral frameworks to suit personal ambitions. In contemporary culture, faith is frequently presented as a tool for self-empowerment rather than a guide for moral and ethical living. Inspirational messages, motivational scripture excerpts, and spiritually themed social media content are often crafted to affirm personal choices instead of challenging individuals to grow within the constraints of spiritual discipline. For example, a message that says, "God will bless single moms," or "God will help you transform your life after mistakes," is undoubtedly uplifting. It resonates emotionally and encourages optimism, especially among audiences who feel marginalized, judged, or constrained by traditional social structures. Yet, when this encouragement is decoupled from accountability, such as refraining from actions the Bible classifies as sinful, it risks promoting a form of spiritual individualism. In other words, it promotes the idea that one can pursue personal gratification and still claim divine endorsement without addressing the moral consequences of their choices. This selective interpretation of Scripture can create real friction when it intersects with structured or disciplined expressions of faith. Women, or anyone for that matter, who engage in this kind of individualized faith often struggle in relationships with partners who are genuinely committed to traditional or biblical principles. The friction arises not from the partner's strictness, but from a mismatch in moral frameworks. If someone has conditioned themselves to believe that God's favor can be claimed regardless of lifestyle choices, then entering a relationship where boundaries, respect, and accountability are prioritized can feel restrictive or challenging. This is not merely a social tension, it has spiritual and emotional implications. When faith is molded to serve self-interest, the relational skills and personal accountability needed for long-term healthy partnerships can be underdeveloped. India Love provides a compelling illustration of this tension in real life. She openly proclaims herself property of God on social media, a phrase that carries significant spiritual weight. The claim suggests a devotion, a submission, and a willingness to adhere to divine guidance. Yet, when one examines her actions, her career choices, her public persona, and the provocative content she posts, the alignment with the principles she claims to represent appears inconsistent. In practice, it often seems that God is being asked to conform to her desires rather than the other way around. This dynamic creates a form of self-service spirituality, where faith is not a guide but a justification for personal ambition or indulgence. It is faith as a brand, a tool for visibility, popularity, or influence, rather than as a framework for moral living or spiritual maturity. Such behavior raises deeper questions about the nature of modern religious identity. Historically, religion has functioned as a moral compass, a communal anchor, and a framework for cultivating virtues such as patience, humility, self-discipline, and empathy. It required followers to navigate their desires, impulses, and societal pressures in ways consistent with a transcendent moral code. Today, the accessibility and immediacy of social media have altered this dynamic. The curated nature of online content incentivizes individuals to highlight aspects of their faith that are socially appealing, marketable, or affirming, while leaving out the more challenging aspects that require restraint or self-reflection. What emerges is a form of performative spirituality, where the perception of piety becomes more important than authentic obedience, and where divine favor is imagined as an endorsement of personal preference. The implications of this selective approach extend beyond personal spirituality and relationships. They also shape societal perceptions of religion and morality. When prominent figures, particularly women in public life, portray a faith that aligns with their personal choices rather than with traditional moral teaching, it influences how audiences understand and interact with religion. Young followers may internalize a distorted version of spiritual accountability, believing that they too can claim God's favor while freely engaging in behaviors Scripture clearly warns against. The danger here is twofold. First, it risks normalizing actions that are spiritually or ethically problematic. Second, it erodes the credibility of religious teachings by presenting them as negotiable or malleable rather than as guiding principles. The issue is further complicated when one considers the role of identity, autonomy, and empowerment. Women, in particular, navigate cultural pressures to be both independent and spiritually upright, and social media amplifies these pressures. Messages like "God will bless single moms" or "God will help you reclaim your body and life after mistakes" speak directly to the desire for empowerment and restoration. They acknowledge lived realities, mistakes, challenges, and societal judgment, while offering hope and agency. Yet, if empowerment is defined solely in terms of self-fulfillment or personal gain, divorced from spiritual discipline, it risks reinforcing a transactional view of faith. Do what you want, and God will reward you. This is a fundamental departure from the biblical conception of spiritual growth, which emphasizes transformation through obedience, humility, and the surrender of self-interest. Moreover, this selective engagement with faith complicates discussions about morality, responsibility, and the role of divine justice. If a person claims that God blesses behaviors traditionally considered sinful, it raises questions about the consistency of divine law and human accountability. Can God genuinely endorse actions that contravene moral instructions in Scripture? Or are these messages a reflection of human reinterpretation, designed to reconcile desire with faith? This is where critical discernment becomes essential. Observers, mentors, and community leaders have a responsibility to distinguish between genuine spiritual encouragement and spiritual rationalization. Without this discernment, faith risks being commodified, stripped of its transformative power, and reduced to a form of self-affirmation. In the case of India Love, her actions exemplify the complexities of modern spiritual identity. Her claim of being property of God signals devotion, yet her lifestyle and career choices suggest an expectation that God accommodates her ambitions. This tension between professed belief and lived reality illustrates the broader phenomenon of individualized spirituality, where divine approval is conceptualized as conditional upon personal preference rather than adherence to moral or ethical standards. It is a form of faith tailored to fit self-interest, a spiritually convenient, yet ultimately unsustainable, approach. The consequences of such a dynamic are profound, both for individuals and for society. On a personal level, selective adherence to spiritual principles can hinder growth, distort moral reasoning, and create relational difficulties. Women who adopt this approach may struggle in partnerships, encounter conflicts in professional or communal settings, and wrestle with internal dissonance between their beliefs and actions. On a societal level, the presentation of faith as flexible or negotiable can erode communal standards, normalize ethically questionable behavior, and dilute the perceived authority of religious teachings. Yet, despite these challenges, there is hope. Recognizing the tension between personal desire and genuine spiritual accountability is the first step toward authentic growth. Authentic spirituality requires humility, the willingness to acknowledge that human desires do not automatically align with divine will. It requires discipline, the commitment to adhere to principles that may be inconvenient or counterintuitive. And it requires reflection, the capacity to critically examine one's actions, motivations, and interpretations of Scripture. Ultimately, the case of India Love and similar figures offers a cautionary tale about the dangers of self-serving spirituality. Faith cannot simply be a tool to legitimize personal ambition or justify behavior that is inconsistent with ethical teachings. True alignment with spiritual principles demands accountability, introspection, and the humility to submit personal desires to higher moral and ethical standards. It is in this alignment that faith achieves its transformative power, shaping character, guiding relationships, and fostering a sense of purpose beyond immediate gratification. The broader lesson is clear: claiming faith is not enough. Authentic spirituality is demonstrated through actions, choices, and accountability. It is realized through the discipline of aligning one's desires with ethical and moral standards, even when doing so is difficult. And it is reflected in the ability to navigate public and private life with integrity, honoring both the divine and the human communities we inhabit. In conclusion, the tension between selective faith and authentic spirituality is a defining challenge of our era, amplified by social media and celebrity culture. Figures like India Love illustrate both the allure and the pitfalls of a self-serving approach to faith. While social media messages of empowerment and redemption resonate emotionally and inspire hope, they must be understood in the context of broader spiritual principles. Without accountability, humility, and adherence to ethical standards, faith risks becoming performative, a tool for self-expression rather than a guide for moral and spiritual growth. True spiritual maturity, by contrast, requires alignment with divine principles, personal responsibility, and the courage to submit one's desires to a higher standard. Only through this alignment can faith fulfill its transformative potential, shaping not just public perception, but character, relationships, and ultimately, the trajectory of a life lived in integrity. That's the take. Your boy Yash Jackson here, breaking down the reality behind the celebrity narrative. Appreciate all the support. Subscribe, hit the bell, and we'll catch you next time.